We continue in chapter 15. Chapter 15, in one word, oived, to serve, in the present tense. What does it mean to serve in the present tense? Well, the righteous are called Eved Hashem, servants of God. In other words, just like a a sage or a king, or a modern day example the Autopilot doesn't give, but a doctor. What does that mean? It means that they have the knowledge, they become this. They're not in the midst of becoming something. They have achieved it. The doctor's achieved the necessary knowledge and passed the grade, and therefore is called a doctor. Right thereafter, not the middle, not the beginning, only after having achieved. So likewise, the righteous, they're called servants of God because they have already done the service of engaging in the battle and won the battle. So now they are true servants. But then there's the one who's serving in the present tense. By the way, it doesn't mean the righteous isn't serving in the present tense. It just means that it's speaking about that which they have achieved. So the Beinani, and like us, Beinani in training, there's a present tense, meaning serving now. And that's what we called Oved Elokim, right? Oved Elokim, a servant of God, serving God, right? And in this, the Alter says there's two types. There's two types. What does that mean, two types? Of a Beinani here means one who serves and one who serves him not. Now, what does it mean to be a Beinani and you don't serve God? Because remember, a Beinani is someone who has complete mastery in their behavior, in their actions, in their speech, and even in willful, cogitated thought. So what does it mean that this Beinani is not serving? Because serving means there's an engagement, there's a battle with the evil inclination, right? That's what the Beinani has. It has urges in the heart that are human, natural, but they're negative, can be even downright evil, right? Lust and whatever it is, things that we spoke about previously. And there can be someone who doesn't wage a war in this regard, and yet masters their behavior. Even when it comes to, committing a minor transgression, and to fulfill the commandments, the positive commandments, even studying of Torah. And yet they are totally engaged, but they're not considered to serve. They are one who do not serve God. Whoa, that sounds like a pretty strong statement. Why is that? Is because they don't really have a battle. They have a very weak evil inclination that doesn't oppose them, doesn't create a battle with them. So, for example, someone who is, assiduous in their studies, and it's kind of a cold personality. Not in a bad way here. I mean, everything has a double-edged sword, so it could be good and bad, right? But because they have a stolid temperament, they have a coldness to them. They are free of conflict when it comes to sexual desire because of frigid nature. So they're not enticed. Another person sees a picture, whoa, right? This person just doesn't get to them. Not even that. Even more so when it comes to pleasures. They don't have a feeling of enjoyment. palate, tastes like this, tastes like that. You know, doesn't make a difference to them really. Just by nature. That's their personality. So therefore, they don't need much. They don't have to work hard. They don't have to engage their minds and their heart in order to, conjure up a devotion to God in their mind that will lead to their heart, that their heart will be devoted to oppose the urges of the heart, whether it's in sexuality or in just, physicality of, food and other things of, comfort, pleasure. And this person doesn't need to do that. They don't have to create this love in their heart. For them, it's enough, the hidden love, what we call the avamusateris, it's in their soul, that conjures up, and it's enough to overcome. This is not called a battle. And therefore, this person, although, again, a Beinoni, meaning that they have mastery over their behavior, but it's not considered one who's serving God, because it's the latent love that is an inheritance to the soul, to the divine soul. It's a gift. It's not something you worked hard to accomplish. So it's not his work or her work. Not the Beinoni's engagement. It's like a given to them by the nature that they have, right? As we mentioned, kind of a frigid personality, lacking, sensation of pleasure. Some people they touch something and they smell something. It creates a desire and a passion or whatever the case may be, right? But not this person, not by their nature, and not by the fact that they have, an inherent love in their soul that is there, and it's, easily accessible. But that's not an achievement on their part. It's a given. It's an inheritance from the patriarchs, bequeathed to the divine soul. Also, even if this person maybe wasn't inherently studious, but they habitually made themselves as a second nature studious, right? So now they don't have to wage a real battle to overcome the desires of the heart. This is a person that's called one who doesn't serve, which is interesting. And that's today's class. Tomorrow we're going to learn what it means to truly serve. But here we're seeing the negative side. Tomorrow we'll see the positive side, but I think we probably get some inkling of it now. So this is the idea of living on autopilot, right? That things come easily, naturally, in a good way, right? We're talking about it, obviously, in a good way. I mean, now, we've probably all seen this. Let's broaden this discussion to beyond the Beinoni, but we see this in people. That some people, thank God, my wife and I are blessed with 10 wonderful children. Each one's different than the other. And you see the nature. That gets nurtured, but there's a nature. You see that in utero, let alone when they're very small. Yes, it does get nurtured, absolutely, hopefully well. But we do see a difference in the nature. And there's sometimes the one who just didn't have to struggle through school, didn't struggle with friends, didn't have challenges in, in interpersonal relations, or, whatever they needed to do, they did. They were just good. And we love that. Why do we love that? Very simple. Because it makes it easier for us as a parent, makes it easier for us as a friend, engaging with such a person. And that's fine. And there's, some merit to that. I'm not disqualifying that. But vis-a-vis the person themselves, yes, maybe they're starting with a more refined character quality on some, in some manner. But it's not necessarily their achievement. It's not something that they can be lauded for, because it's autopilot. It's following their nature. That has been nurtured. So it doesn't take away from the fact that what they've achieved it doesn't take away from what they have achieved, meaning in their behavior being impeccable as a Bainani. We're talking about a Bainani over here. But it doesn't, that's not called true service, really serving. Without going into the other side, the flip side of the coin, which will be tomorrow. How today is keeping us on the edge of our seat, so we will continue tomorrow, but we'll get a full regard on what this means, which is a beautiful idea. But this tells us something that, how we can view things and look at things. And the most important thing is to question ourselves, at least from time to time. Am I living on autopilot? Am I just, going through the motions, and in a good way maybe, coming to the Tanya class? Think about it. Is there any struggle in learning Tanya? Or does it just go smoothly? Now, the struggle could be put away all other things so you're not multitasking. Right? And you're not multitasking. So you're here, Tanya, but you're maybe not fully engaged. So that might be a struggle, to put away other things and to really focus and concentrate on Torah learning. Or like by prayer, which is, a very common, difficult challenge, that we can go on autopilot and can be focused, but we're not really, not truly engaged. We're not giving it our all. That, and sometimes we can just go through it. Autopilot. Everybody's autopilot is on different levels. The Bainani is way up here autopilot to what we're talking about over here at this level of a Bainani, right? And another person can be here, another person can be way down here, and whatever that autopilot is, means. And obviously we're not talking about doing bad stuff on autopilot. That's not up for discussion. I'm talking about do good stuff. I'm talking about doing good stuff. So this is something we need to think about. Because there is doing that good stuff on autopilot that is without a struggle. And what is that struggle meant to be? Well, sorry. That's it for today. Tomorrow, we'll keep you posted on what that struggle is supposed to be. We'll keep you posted. We're going to learn it. And what it means to truly serve God. Okay, questions, comments, thoughts. I see some questions here on Facebook. Let's get to that. By the way, just I'd like to make a comment on Facebook in particular, but anywhere where there's a comment posted, um, I think it's important that what our discussion, and this might be, in keeping with the point of today, is that keep the discussion focused on what we're talking about. Maybe there's other areas that you're interested in Judaism. That's wonderful. But let's keep it focused on what we're learning. That would be a really good way to not live on autopilot. Just, whatever, comes into your head as a comment or a question or a thought, keep it focused on what we're learning. Now, that doesn't mean you can't bring up other topics. I'm not trying to make a hard rule over here. You could, to me, to bring up the topics, not in discussion in the comments, there, or statements and so on and so forth. Let's keep it focused on what we're engaged in. And if there is something, so, ask me the question. And if I feel it's appropriate, or we have the time, that I have the time, and it's the time for that, so I can bring something that will be even off topic, which is fine, not a problem. But I think that will help us not to live on autopilot in when it comes to questions and things. And okay. John, it seems that the struggle battling with the Yetzer Hara would lessen the likelihood of stagnation one might find with a weaker Yetzer Hara. Yeah, good point. Very good, John. Thank you. Yeah, and again, more on that tomorrow. It's sort of hard to, give one side of the coin. It says, without the other side of the coin. But, yeah, very good point. Alice, how could we accomplish serving? Again, that's going to be tomorrow, right? Today we spoke about what it means not to serve, right? That we just have habits, we have nature, and we even have the Ava Mesoteres, the hidden love, that is an inheritance. That is not something that we have accomplished. So all of that is, so to speak, autopilot, depending on the level that you're at. And we're talking about the Beinoni here, so there's autopilot there. And that's what we want to make sure, and that's today's, mantra or take home. Where am I doing things on autopilot? How is it I'm coming to learn Tanya? Well, let's not go further than here, and then it's not autopilot. That there's, So of course, you have to engage the mind with that, right? Multitasking, Michael says, this is autopilot. Okay. Denise says, is the ego that prevents the struggle. Yeah, well, the animal soul wants to be comfortable, right? So the path of least resistance is the comfort zone of the animal soul. Comfort physically, comfort spiritually. What does comfort mean? Comfort means I am very happy in this box, in this limitation. Right? Why? Because I know what it is. I've been here. And the animal soul, therefore, doesn't need to struggle. Right? In the struggle, as we will see, is the point. Okay, Instagram, we have a question. So, sometimes perhaps our minds are scattered. So that's maybe where we need to struggle. Alice, how would a tzaddik serve Hashem? Isn't it easy for him with no difficult effort? So a tzaddik is on a different, that's what we call an Eved Hashem, a servant of God, not one in the present term serves God, but, of course, the tzaddik is serving God, but the tzaddik is not like, dealing with darkness and light, with good and evil. The tzaddik is dealing with good and greater good. That's a different, a different idea completely. So on Instagram we have a question. So let me take a look. Natalie, you'd like to know the other side about a person who's strong. Okay, that's going to be tomorrow's class. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut off in any way the discussion, but it's tomorrow's class. So in many different ways, what it means to, like Leah brings up about being shy, and that's her comfort zone. So we're going to learn tomorrow, there's in personality what it means, and then there is in divine service ultimately. But anyways, we will get there tomorrow, God willing. All right. Any questions or comments do we have? Yes, we have Marcy. Please share with us.
So this may be completely useless because it's such an abstract concept, but I'm having a real struggle understanding what a tzaddik is. Now, this is, again, I'm not saying I would like to strive to be one. I'm grateful if I'm not a jerk 75% of the time, and I feel like that's pretty achievable, more or less. But, in previous discussions, we've talked about how a tzaddik is in a state where they don't have impure thoughts. But then at the beginning of this class, we talked about how they have achieved that state. And that's a little inconsistent with what we said before, where a tzaddik is born, not made. And then today we're kind of saying, well, a tzaddik is actually made. And so I'm since it's a foundational definition, I kind of want to understand it.
Good. Okay. Thank you for asking that. So let me, I see where there can be confusion. So the tzaddik is born with the potential to be a tzaddik, but they're not born as a tzaddik. That's not possible. It's not possible that a child, isn't self-directed and is just purely there serving God and so on. It needs to be achieved through great labor, but of course that achievement is going to be way beyond, something that we are accustomed to or familiar with. And that's why you have a difficulty with the concept of a tzaddik, because it is something way beyond us. Any urge, a complete tzaddik in particular, that any urge in the heart is completely gone, completely transformed. Any negative urge, self-directed, indulgence that the heart desires, the most simplest thing, just seeking a comfortable chair to sit in or a good meal to eat, and enjoying, whatever physical pleasure, and completely removed from the tzaddik. So, but they have to achieve that. They have to work on that. So when we said that Barasa tzaddikim, that or Job said, right, in first chapter, and we answered that in chapter 14. So what it means to say, or in 13, what it means to say is that God created certain people with the potential, with a soul that can become a tzaddik, but they have to achieve it. So, definitely, it's not something that is a given. The given is the potential. We don't have that potential. Um, or 99.9% of the population doesn't have. Is that clearer, Marcy?
Yes, thank you. That is a big weight. I've been kind of wrestling with that for a week or so.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad that you brought it up. Finally, yeah, because that is an important idea to appreciate and to understand. And I've told the story before of the of a simple Jew that was a chassid of the oh my gosh. Um, it'll come to me in a moment. He was and he studied something from the Ein Yaakov, from the Gadata of the Talmud. It says there are 36 hidden tzaddikim. And he came to his Rebbe and he said, Rebbe, obviously you're not one of the 36 hidden tzaddikim, because everybody knows you're a tzaddik. So he smiles and says, Och and vei, mir, woe unto me if that my righteousness is what you see. In general, what we see of another person is something that is based on who we are. And through that prism is how we see another. That's why sometimes when we see not good stuff in another, the Baal Shem Tov says it's really a mirror reflection of really seeing yourself and the not good stuff in you on some similar level, right? But here's even on even a greater respect is that when we're looking at a tzaddik, we're looking through our eyes that, that we're eons away from that tzaddik, and therefore it's hard for us to understand and to appreciate, to comprehend this. We may kind of believe it, but that doesn't mean we understand it. And so therefore, it just inherently, the concept of the righteous is something, that every urge is completely, it's not like, by the Beinoni or by us, we can have urges in the heart, and what do? We can push them aside, not give them playtime in the head, right? Someone was telling me about their, that this neighbor there's just not a nice person, and constantly speaking about this person, and says, I don't know why you're giving such playtime to your neighbor. Is your neighbor paying for this that he should be in your head so much? You're not even getting paid for this, and you have him filled in your mind, your neighbor who you don't like, and you have this negativity to him. So, so we can push away that playtime, totally. But that negativity is there, so it's hard for us to relate in general. But thank you for bringing that up, that there should be greater clarity on the issue. I see over here some more questions or comments. Okay, I'm comfortable being alone is a struggle. I'm not clear on what that means, Darren. Davida, what happens to someone who is involved with the animal soul that he feels that he has no struggles? Is so involved. Oh, well, we explained that already. That's not a Beinoni or a Beinoni in training like we are. Someone is so involved in their animal soul that it takes them over, that they don't feel the struggle because they're so on autopilot of the animal soul. Really, that's not the Beinoni we're talking about over here, but the animal soul. Obviously, first of all, that's not someone who is totally self-serving. This Beinoni is God-serving, but not in the true sense. But someone who is overpowered by the animal soul, so much so that they have no remorse for anything that they do. Everything that they do can be justified. That's really not a healthy place to be. Laurie, is a Beinoni where they find ease in serving a result of the parent the parents at the time of conception. That helps, but it still there's still struggle. Yeah, that does help. What is the difference between Nefesh, Bahamis, and Yetzirah? Good question. So Nefesh Bahamis means animal soul, Yetzirah means evil inclination. So the evil inclination is a part of the animal soul. The evil inclination is in reference to the emotive disposition of the animal soul. But the animal soul isn't just emotional disposition. It's the mainstay of it, right? Your feelings, your instincts to be fulfilled, right? That's the mainstay of it. But the Nefesh Bahamis also has intelligence. There's something more to it. It's the a full being, so to speak, just like the godly soul. Alice, do these people have any potential to become a tzaddik? Which people? Alice, please let me know. Vicky, is it considered a failure if one with the potential does not fulfill that? Is it a failure? Good question. Ultimately, yeah, whatever potential God gave us, whatever we were meant to become and to fulfill and to do in this world, and we don't do it, well, that is a failure. It's not a failure that we can't come back to and deal and do tshuva and regain, and regain the challenge and fulfill what we were meant to do. It's not a failure for good, but it's a failing in that moment. I mean, in regards with when they are born that way, just as someone was born a Beinoni. Again, they're born, whatever you're born with, you're meant to struggle. And again, that's going to be tomorrow's class more at greater length. Is Baba Sali considered a tzaddik? Most definitely is considered a tzaddik. Yes, absolutely. Very holy, special individual. Those who do not struggle. Okay. Yeah, Alice, those who do not struggle, so then means that just not truly serving. Again, tomorrow we're going to have more on that. Okay, folks? You're great. Amazing. I'm inspired every day that I come here, I got to tell you. Really. By your questions, by your engagement, and it's beautiful and wonderful. A good Chodesh to everybody. A good month. This is the month that the previous Rebbe passed away on the 10th of Shvat in 1950, and our Rebbe became Rebbe. As the sun set, the sun also rises, and the sun rose with our Rebbe, and the sun still has not set, because Gimel Tammuz is a day that the sun doesn't set, as it is historically. So it's a day of connection to the Rebbe, as our Rebbe, and the previous Rebbe in his passing, and all his great achievements that are reflected and drawn into the world, ever more so on such a day. So we'll have more about that. In the meantime, we'll continue. Today at 1 o'clock with Rambam, and tomorrow with the end of chapter 15. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Metro Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day and a good Chodesh, a good, wonderful new month to everybody.